Today we are focusing on a new topic compared to yesterday. If you watch yesterday's recording, you will see that we talked about how we can give our regular classes a green twist. Today, we will go outside our English classes, see how we can have a bigger impact. And Theo will tell us exactly what we are going to do.
Thank you so much, Cristiana. So in today's webinar, we will look at some of the benefits of creating a whole lesson on climate issue. And when I say whole lesson, you can also think about a unit or a module, or maybe, a whole course, if that's possible in your school. And because, Cristiana mentioned that only together we can do things and we can act and change the world, we will try to give you some ideas on how you can collaborate with teachers of other subjects and what are the benefits of doing this. Also, try to explore a few cross-curricular topics. We'll touch upon only a couple of them because there are so many. And we know that teachers are very creative. So I'm sure that you can find, a lot more, but we'll just give you an idea and what you can do so that you can take it further and, of course, develop your own collaboration with teachers of other subjects. And why stop there, collaborating only with teachers in your school? Why not, work with teachers and students from different schools in your country and, worldwide as well? So let's get started.
Absolutely. And we do hope that throughout today's session, we will also inspire you a little bit in terms of collaboration, because Theo and I work together on many projects and we love doing that. We kind of add to each other's ideas and contributions. So hopefully this will motivate you as well to find a person or several other teachers to work with. Okay, so Theo mentioned that it is important to insist on this topic. And if you are really passionate about it, or if you are just discovering the topic, you might want to see how your learners react to it. And if they are equally involved and equally passionate about it, you might develop a full lesson. There are some advantages to doing that. Yesterday, we looked at regular lessons when we just add a task, a question, maybe some homework related to climate action. But now we are talking about having a full class or more classes, as Theo was saying, a unit dedicated to this. What's the benefit? First of all, obviously, you will be able to focus more on both language and content. There's so much benefit in having the time to not only introduce the topic and the vocabulary related to it, but to use it. And when we interact with the content, we will have the opportunity to use specific vocabulary and structures necessary for talking about this global issue.
Thank you, Cristiana. We were saying yesterday that we are so lucky to be language teachers because we can use any content we want. As long as, we are using words anyway and grammar. So the language is there. And, the wider range of topics that we include in our lessons, the more interesting they will be, the more motivating for our students. So I think it's a perfect combination between, language and content. And because we are in the 21st century skills, and somehow not every day, but every year there are new skills needed from our students, and things that we learned a couple of years ago are not current anymore, when we need to develop new skills because there are so many things changing every day. We need to keep up with this and to equip our students with the 21st century skills as well. One of them, critical thinking, very important, especially in this context of climate action, because it allows them to analyze and evaluate things that are happening around them and also try to find solutions. So when you're finding solutions, it's not only about critical thinking, it's also about your creativity. And today we are also going to talk about climate action in a more creative way. So it's not only about science, about things that are about facts. We can discuss about it and we can integrate it in a different way, in a more creative way. We'll tell you a bit more later. And last but not least, we want our students to be global citizens and to take initiative. This is what we have in mind when we think about leadership. We want them to be able to act and be leaders in the sense that they take initiative and they do things.
And of course, by taking the learning from the classroom out into the world, by creating new habits, how we can change our lives for the better so that we reduce our impact on nature, actually leads to life skills. We will have a true impact on our learners' lives, and we will try to to develop these life skills. But how can we do that? Theo mentioned science, she mentioned arts. Of course, it's best if we have a holistic approach. We have a cross-curricular approach. It could be something that challenges us. Maybe we are intimidated at first, thinking that we will have to work with somebody new, with another teacher, but the benefits will outweigh the challenges. And of course, everything, the whole lesson, the whole activity or project will become more meaningful and relevant if we have this kind of holistic approach.
And not only that, you are going to collaborate with other teachers, but I think it's a learning experience. Cristiana was telling us yesterday, it's a learning experience for us. We are not experts in climate change or science or all the facts and everything that is happening, but we can learn together with our students. And I think this is really important. It makes it really meaningful and relevant to all of us because we are part of the same problem, and together with our students we find solutions. And this cross-curricular approach doesn't always have to be with working with other teachers. It's about the content that you want to include in your lessons. If you want to include like science, a bit of science or a bit of art and everything else, I think, as I said before, we are very lucky we can do this in our language classes.
Great. Okay. We like to be very organized. Theo more than me, I have to admit. I'm not the most organized person, but she loves to have a clear checklist, clear steps to follow. And I'm more than happy to accompany her on her organized learning journeys. So, of course, if we want to start working with other teachers, and if we want to develop a whole new lesson or a whole new unit on climate, we need to know how to start. Sometimes just the beginning is intimidating. Once we get started, things flow, but the beginning may be a bit daunting. So we came up with this checklist that you might find useful. We do. And we suggest that, first of all, you start with what you want to focus on. What exactly climate action is such a large topic. What exactly do you want to tackle in your lesson? And once you do that, how far will you go? Will you discuss this in one lesson? Will you go deeper into a series of lessons? Do you know enough? Do you want to read a little bit more before you start addressing this? And then Theo, one of our favorite things, the focus on language, right?
The focus on language, yes. What language do I need? What language do our learners need in order to be able to discuss the topic so I think this is really important. And in this case, how we keep the balance between the language and the content. So at this point, we are probably going to wear our, language teacher hat and just help our students and pre-teach any vocabulary that we feel will help them understand better and will help them express their own opinions about this. And also in the same context, somehow, which skills do I want to practice? Very important, because it again, they allow touching upon this topic allows us to practice all the skills. And we'll see this today, and probably those of you who attended yesterday's webinar, we were able to give you some ideas on how you can do this with your learners.
Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, the world today is so unpredictable that you never know when your teaching conditions are going to change. So it's also good maybe to think if you can adapt the lesson, maybe not only to online classes, but to different levels, so that you don't always have to start afresh and to come up with a new lesson. Maybe the same lesson can be adjusted so that it is suitable for different levels.
And of course, you can looking at the content. Sometimes you may think, okay, I might need, or it might be useful for my learners to have another teacher helping me with this, or collaborating on this topic, simply because their contribution will give value and to the lesson. And as you, Cristiana said, working with other people, with somebody, it is also a great model for your students. You show them that collaboration is always something that can bring more ideas and more solutions. So try to find someone to work with. It doesn't have to be one teacher. You can choose 2 or 3.
Exactly. Make a team. And then once you have decided who you can work with, you can also think how you can use it at school level. We were saying that this time we are taking things out of the classroom necessarily. We don't feel confined to the classroom space. We can also take it outside the classroom and maybe use it in the school. Maybe your collaboration with another teacher will inspire other teachers who will be curious, who will ask you questions. We said that we are lucky that we are English teachers. Indeed, we are, because 58% of the content on the internet is in English, which means that we as English teachers have access to lots of resources, lots of ideas. Probably we catch the trends in teaching before teachers of other subject matters. So why not launch this idea in your school and see how the other teachers feel about it?
And then be ready for an action plan. So we mentioned this yesterday. Whenever you do the end of the lesson or the end of the unit or project that you're doing, make sure there is an action plan there. Make sure there is something that your students can do. So it's time for climate action. We are raising awareness is very important, but it's also very important to do something so that we can feel that we help, and we overcome that feeling of eco-anxiety. Yes, and helplessness, exactly. And even take it further, why not take this learning outside the classroom? We keep saying that we want to bring the world into the classroom. Yes, that's fine. But sometimes we need to take the learning outside the classroom into the world. So this is a nice and good opportunity to do so.
So now we have a plan, right? A checklist, some clear steps. Let's see how we can actually plan such a lesson. It's good to start, at least for us. We find it useful to start from something in the calendar. What do we do when we start a new week? We look at the calendar and we kind of plan, right? For instance, when Joe and Melissa kindly invited us to have this webinar, we looked at the calendar and we noticed that on the 26th of November, we had World Sustainable Transport Day. Perfect. You know how Google sometimes reminds you of International Day for different things. This is a great opportunity. Okay, so if this is a day dedicated to sustainable transport, let's dig a little bit deeper. Let's dedicate a lesson or the whole week to this topic, and let's see what we can do around it.
And you can see this link. You have all the climate change events, the whole calendar, and you can just, it's good to get some inspiration from there. And one of the, Cristiana was mentioning that you can dedicate a whole week, and one of the participants yesterday said that what if I, dedicate 5 minutes every day? And yeah, why not? That would be a great idea. Just the word of the day, or something that could be connected.
And especially with a topic like this one, right? Sustainable transport. Just asking the learners, how do you come to school? In many communities, learners actually walk to school if they are in a rural area or they live close by. This is great. I think sometimes we focus so much on problems that we forget to recognize our good actions. Yes, it's great that you go to school on foot or by bicycle. Let's acknowledge that and let's say this is actually what everybody should be doing, or they should find something else than private cars and solutions that would actually have a bad impact on nature.
So let's get started with planning. There was a long checklist, but there are a few things that you want to think about. It's what subject teachers you could collaborate with on a climate lesson. And it's not only about the topic, it's also about the person. Because it's important. You have a kind of chemistry there, and it's important who you choose. And of course, probably you will choose the teacher that, depending on the subject that you want to focus on, the topic, and how you would design together if you work together, and how their contribution in this project or in the lesson. So it's very good to decide all these things from the very beginning, so that you can have a common approach, and also it usually saves time. And think about the impact. Do you want a project or a lesson at school level? Do you want to take it further and develop it maybe at country level or community level, or even more? And we'll give you some ideas on that. Maybe, find some school partners in, worldwide you can work with. I think that's ideal if you get to that point. I think it's also a wonderful experience for your learners and really motivational. And also, Cristiana, maybe you can tell us about measuring the impact.
Yes, I will, if you don't mind, I will not insist a lot on that now, because we'll have a section dedicated to that. But just to say, we think that this is an important part of a project. Sometimes we do things, we know how we feel, we have an intuition if it went well or not so well. But what was the real impact? It might be counterintuitive. Sometimes we don't feel very confident about the success of a project, but if we were to measure it, we might feel motivated because we could see the results, and the results might exceed our expectations. So we will give you some ideas on how to measure the impact of your projects. And meanwhile, while we are moving on, maybe we can invite our participants in the webinar to tell us, to answer that first question. What teacher would you like to collaborate with? Maybe like this, you can see if we also thought about the same teachers, the same kind of subject matters or not. And you can tell us maybe why. So Theo, this is one example, right? But there are so many materials on the Climate Connection British Council website. There are materials for different lessons at different levels, and even in terms of language level and in terms of age group, which is very useful. They can be taken as they are, or they can be adapted. They can be made yours. This one is entitled The Story of Water, and it has several subsections. If you want different aspects that could be developed into one or several lessons. Here you have some of the ideas, like River of Life is the first lesson. Resourceful River is the second one. Global River, Polluted River, Imaginative River, and Preserving Rivers. This is a fascinating topic, though. I think sometimes water, the subject of water, can be too large to address. And by choosing the river as one aspect of water can be good. It sometimes is good to channel all your attention towards one aspect of a topic.
Can I just take a second to remind our participants here today to type their questions in the Q&A section, because if you type them in the chat, we might miss them and we don't want to. So find the Q&A section and type it there. Thank you so much. So Cristiana asked a question a bit earlier, so maybe you can tell us, looking at maybe even if at this topic, you know, the river and the story of water, maybe you can tell us who you would like to collaborate with. The teacher of, I don't know, which subject. You don't have to give us the name.
We won't know them, maybe.
It's just the, you know, what teacher, maybe the, I don't know, the geography teacher. I'm just giving an example. Geography, okay. Thank you.
Perfect.
And biology. Yes. Let's see. Be creative and just look at the topics here, you know, the subtitles. Maybe they will inspire you a bit. You have River of Life.
Science teacher. Perfect. We have examples. Theo and I are involved in a project with teacher activity groups here in Romania, and in one of our tags, we have lots of, initially they were addressed to English teachers, but in one of our tags, they attracted lots of teachers of other subject matters. And we have an example with a teacher of physics joining the community of teachers of English and Romanian and French. And they have developed so many great projects together. So combining two subject matters that maybe do not communicate very often together might be a very surprising, might have a very surprising result. And it's great for the teachers and the learners.
That's true. So we have physics teacher, okay. We have biology, science. Okay.
So we're turning around this area of science, probably though, because we feel a bit worried that we are not specialists in the topic, and we need somebody to back us up with some figures and percentages and information that is accurate, which is fine. It's perfectly fine. I just want to remind you that even though we are not specialists in the climate science, we are specialists in education. So we know how to encourage learners to explore a topic. We know how to do that ourselves. Great teachers are also great learners, in my experience. So we can just explore the topic together. Of course, if we feel the need to have a science teacher, a biology teacher, a geography teacher with us, sure, that's what collaboration is all about.
And it's also the fact that we are not, you know, you are not living only in the school. We are also part of this world.
Hopefully.
So yeah, hopefully. Well, I know that teachers, you know, spend a lot of time at school, or, you know, preparing lessons, always surrounded by tests and worksheets, but we do live in this world, and this issue is, you know, it's a global issue that it affects our everyday life. It's not only about our school life. So I think it's even more important to get involved in this topic. So there was what I wanted to we wanted to tell you, to remind you that these education packs, as they are called, you will find a lot of topics there. They have a lot of information and a lot of you know, the planning is very detailed, and you have ideas for collaboration, you have ideas for experiments that you can do as an English teacher. So they are not only science experiments. And here is, we just picked a few ideas for you that we hope will inspire you to find a collaboration and find, you know, approach this topic from a cross-curricular point of view. So if you remember, we mentioned at some point that it is really important to take learning outside the classroom. And it's even more importantly with this topic, it is very, I think it is essential to reconnect with nature and to, you know, help our learners get closer to the nature. In the era of technology and of, you know, we are always in the car, and if you're not in the car, you're in the school, and if not in the school, you're at home. So we spend a lot of time indoors
very often, right?
Yes. So we spend a lot of time indoors. So let's take the learners outside and have organized a field trip. And what better way to start than from the, things that you have right next to you, like thinking about the river next to you. I think all the cities and towns and river and villages have a river or a source of water next to them. So you can collaborate with a science or geography or biology teacher or, on this topic, and just go out in the nature and explore the river that is close to where you live. So a few things that you can do.
Yeah, there are lots of things, of course. Don't be fooled by the very practical hands-on tasks. All this while, you might be talking to your students in English to give instructions, to provide support. So all these things could be done in English. But you can take, for instance, water quality readings. There are lots of kits that can be bought to measure all sorts of aspects of the quality of water, or you could collaborate with the science teacher who might provide some simpler methods. Anyway, the idea is to collect some samples of water and to have them tested or to test them yourselves. The learners might be asked to make sketches and notes about the forms of life they can see, about the shape of the rocks and the pebbles around the river. They might take and exchange photographs, right? They are always with their phones in their hands, so they will find this very easy to do. What else though?
And, we were talking about this yesterday. All those photographs can be used in the English classroom. Creating a bank of resources created by your students. I think it will be really nice for you, and also for them. They will feel involved in the lesson. Create some simple maps. I'm sure you have a drawer, a good a student who is very good at drawing in your classroom. I used to have one of them at least. I'm horrible at this, so I use them. Yeah, I use them to draw. So I think they will definitely enjoy, creating simple maps and routes, and going even deeper into the issue, thinking about the water safety issue. In some regions, we don't even think about it. We take it for granted, the water that we have. And I think it's the case here, right, Cristiana? We do have it. We don't, we say, that's water. But we'll talk about it a bit later, how important it is to look at this issue, like the safety issue, sanitation, in terms of sanitation from a global perspective. And, it's not, we don't live in only this bubble. We live on the, on Earth. So issues from one part of the world affect actually the whole world. And it's a great idea for a project, and we'll tell you a bit more later.
I was thinking now, Theo, while you were speaking, that a few weeks ago, I heard a report. It was on the news, actually, but they were saying that water is such an important resource for all people. We can't live without it. That in 2023, they registered 80% more conflicts related to water or using water as a weapon, meaning that in conflict areas, they targeted water and cutting off water in order to kind of retaliate against the population. This is horrible, right? Water should be a human right. Access to water should be something really given to all the people. So talking about these aspects, making learners aware of these things is very, very important. And we mentioned a field trip. Please don't imagine that you have to go out for the whole weekend or a whole day. Maybe you have a little source of water next to your school. The only heads up I would give you is to tell the parents what you are doing and convince them that this is for the better, because they might expect their kids to go back with a bit of mud under their nails and being very happy that they just looked for worms in the riverbed. they are so happy when they actually get in touch with nature, that things may get out of control in terms of cleanliness, but that's good. It's better to do that than to be glued to a screen all day long.
I will anticipate something, by answering a question that was in the chat, simply because it connects really well with what you're saying. Somebody was asking about, primary. How can I do this with primary? So this is how you can do it. It doesn't have to be very complicated. You don't have to speak only in English. But if you just, spot some plants and, wildlife and name them in, in English, and I think it's a great combination of some learning, learning language and words, and also going outside in the, in a field trip and learn about nature and connect with nature. So it doesn't have to be something very complicated, but they love it.
And we do, if we are honest. Now, because we were talking about the river of life, again, there is another suggestion for a project with the river next to you. For instance, you could think about, I mean, for this project that we were talking about, the field trip, what would be the advantages? Maybe you can come up with your own. Please use the chat to let us know if this would be useful for your learners, how you would like to adapt it or change it. Maybe it's not a river, maybe it's another source of water, maybe it's another geographical feature. I don't know. Just tell us how you would use it. But the benefit of getting out of the classroom are undeniable. First of all, just that this reconnection with nature is wonderful. Then they get to see that whatever they do in school is actually related to life, to real life. There are experiments suggested. We will also look at some of them. Perfect. They will learn something about the quality of water. They will maybe find out that worldwide there are people who are water tasters. They actually taste the water, and beyond the analysis of the water, they tell you about, I don't know, how it feels on your palate. So this is something nice to realize that there is a possible job. Why not? Then they will identify problems with the water. Do they have access to clear water, to running water on a regular basis? Why not? And so on. They once the problems are identified, if for instance, if they see that the water in the river is polluted, what can we do as a community? What can we do as a class, as a person even? How can we start with one person to change something? And of course, this all leads to feeling empowered, to feeling not necessarily in control, because it's a bit too much, but we feel that we can do something. We are not victims. We are not just waiting for things to happen. We are taking action to prevent bad things from happening.
Thank you. And you mentioned the experiment, and of course you're thinking, oh, this is for the science teacher. It's not for me. But you will find in these materials, you will find a lot of experiments that you can do yourself. Also very well explained, but also very simple to do. And honestly, I enjoy them doing this, from time to time in the English classroom. Just, it breaks the routine. Besides, of course, all the benefits that we've just mentioned, it just breaks the routine in the English classroom, and you do something else. And again, we want to remind you that you're still using English while you're doing this. You're still learning a lot of they're still learning a lot of words. But as you can see here, just a very simple experiment to explain the water cycle. So I would encourage you to go and try it yourself first, of course. With experiments, it's good to do this, especially that we are not doing this very often. And then try in the classroom and see what you get.
And once you have established the issues in your community, once you have localized the lesson or the project, you can also think globally. We were saying that we want our learners to be global citizens, which means owning their own national identity and thinking in a global way to promote the well-being of all human beings. We can also start approaching the topic of rivers of the world. This is a way of looking at the global picture. Sometimes we feel that global things or global issues do not affect us. But if we start from the local aspects of the problem, we can also identify the bigger problem. And here, for instance, you will find in the materials that you will actually locate in the link that Melissa gave you, and also in all the materials that will be shared with you in the handout, you will see that there are some very nice ideas on taking ourselves out of our comfort zone, out of our known environment. And we can ask students to reflect about life in different communities by looking at some global stories. There is this website Gapminder, in which they show you how different people, different families live, and how the use of water impacts their lives. It's fascinating. It's absolutely an eye-opener. You can truly see how things that we might take for granted, or things that we maybe some people do not have, actually other families have a different experience. So it's something really good for learners to develop also empathy, to think outside the box, and to see if maybe they can do something about it. Last week, I happened to be, as a mother this time, not as a teacher, in a meeting of students, and one school here in Romania actually went to Africa and contributed to making wells for some small communities that didn't have access to water. Now, of course, not everybody can do that, but at least being aware of that people sometimes have to travel for kilometers just to get some water, is a good reminder for us not to waste it.
Exactly. Thank you so much. And you know, something that I know we keep repeating ourselves. It's important to plan some action. We
Our
hope
mantra.
that this, yeah, exactly,
Act
our
now.
mantra. Okay, we have the experiment, and we demonstrate different aspects of pollution. This is another topic in the materials. You will find a polluted river. Unfortunately, I think that this is in every city, especially in big cities. And you can take it further and discuss about the plastic pollution in rivers and oceans, the global level. And then what we keep saying, do something about it. Let's see what we can do as individuals, as students, as teachers, what we can do to reduce this plastic use, because whatever we do at a local level will actually affect at global level. And you can just have this chart here, or this table, and Cristiana, I think, mentioned earlier or yesterday, just be part of it yourself. This is very important, so that students see that it's not a task for them, it's a task for us. So just asking them to keep a record of the plastic that they use, and thinking about solutions, how they can reduce. For example, you have a plastic bottle and you use every day because you take it to school. Can you do something about it? Yes, I can buy one which is probably not made of plastic, or even if it is, it's the one that can be reused more than once, and you can keep it for a year, or how much time you want. So small things. It doesn't have to be something very complicated, or it's just things that if you keep a record of them, if you see the like a table where you tick and write and things, it feels that those things are actually done, and you are doing something for the environment. So this is one practical idea of
and an
action.
alternative to this, if you want to make it more visible for the eye, just to be able to see it, it's something that Theo and I have done in other projects. That was to do things as we usually do for a week, and collect all the plastic that a person generates separately. So for instance, we launch it as a challenge for the learners to have a separate bag for the plastic they have generated in a week. And they do things as usual, they just gather all the plastic. And then they can bring pictures or they can make videos to show us in school how the situation is at home. And then we discuss together, we come up with some possible solutions. And then for another week or 2 weeks, we try to change some of those small actions that Theo has just pointed out. What can we do? Can we find alternatives? Can we do something else? And in a conscious way, we try to avoid plastic and, again, gather all the plastic we generate separately and compare. Does it make a difference if at least one person does that? You will be surprised, and I hope the learners will feel inspired as well. How changing some very small changes, some very small things in their regular lives, not making a huge change and going out of our way, could actually be very beneficial.
Thank you so much. And now we are going to something that we feel it's something probably you haven't thought about, that we can connect with art. So we talked about science, which is probably the obvious choice. But let's go a bit, let's go beyond that and think about how we can involve creativity here, and because our students are very different and they have different skills. And we have the students who are very good at science and they will feel very comfortable with it. But sometimes, it's important to vary the approaches so that you can get more students involved and you can motivate more students. So art can be an excellent ambassador to raise awareness about climate change, simply because art is emotional. It has emotional engagement. What Cristiana was saying, we start usually from our feelings. When you look at a piece of art, it's how you feel about it first, and then probably you think about more about it. Arts are interconnected, and we know that visual arts have a stronger, and visuals in general have a stronger impact and can be very suggestive. Not to mention that, as they are interconnected, that different cultural institutions can create an extensive network. So you can get inspired from, there is a lesson here about, and an article with an artist who is taking photographs of plastic in the oceans and in water. So we are still in the water area, and some of them are really powerful, and and you will find that the students themselves, some of them are very artistic, and they can do things like this, so they can get involved and they will feel creative and appreciated. And of course, at they will also raise awareness on this.
And of course, the benefits are that they will think about repurposing certain objects. They will use materials that they found maybe on a beach, in the street, to create some art. And you can find some inspiration. You don't have to come up with everything on your own. You can find articles, podcasts with artists who found inspiration, or you can, of course, ask students what they can do, how they could integrate this kind of topic of the river into something artistic. Maybe it's just pictures. Photography is a form of art, after all, right? Yeah. Maybe it's creating something that can be displayed next to the local river to draw the attention of the whole community to the potential of water, to the dangers that we expose water to, and so on. So it can be something truly inspirational.
Thank you. And because we are talking about inspiration and creativity, you can discuss and you can create a lesson with a literature teacher, the language teacher, and we had an idea of writing a poem, because like a haiku, which is usually about nature, and weather. So students can be very creative. So we can raise awareness in different ways. Why not in a, you know, to appeal to other forms of art, like even music. There are so many songs that, you know, are inspired from this topic. These are just few of them, but you can find a lot online, and students react in a positive way to music, and you know this because whenever you have a song in the class, they will you know that they're there. So you can find creative ways to use the songs as well.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
And if you see that the learners get engaged, you can go bigger on a larger scale and develop some projects. Maybe just compare results of your project with other schools doing similar projects. You can find a partner school, and there is a link. If you just look for British Council Schools Partner Finder, you might be able to locate such a school. I often see in the teachers community for British Council, I see requests. Is anybody interested in doing an exchange on this, or a common class or object? So you can find a partner and work together on different aspects. Again, it's so good to compare what we do, what other people do, see what kind of solutions we find. The challenges may be similar, but the solutions may be completely different. So that's truly inspirational to see how things work.
So I think you've already mentioned all these benefits. So we are going to finish in with one last idea on you can take it further and organize your own climate conferences. Those of you who are familiar with the MUN, the Model United Nations, which has, you know, it's been around for a while, for quite a few years, you can think about having a conference, you know, with your students on climate change and climate action.
Yes. And of course,
Jo is here.
Yes, I'm so sorry, Jo.
I appeared. Sorry, just to let you know that we've got a couple more minutes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'll just let you finish. There aren't too many questions, so I'll just let you finish. But two minutes, and then I'm sorry, we'll have to wrap up.
Sure. We were actually just wrapping up. We were going to say, going back to how we started, it is important to measure the impact of your project just to see how things are going. There are many things you can do. In some of the materials that we shared, there are suggested tools, even a survey. You apply the survey to your learners at the beginning of the project, see how they feel or think about certain topics, and then you apply it at the end and see if they have changed their views, if they have different kind of knowledge, a different attitude, different habits. And you can also do the famous by now KWL chart, which is at the beginning of the project, you ask learners what they know and they take a few notes, what they wonder about or what they would like to know, and they fill in the second column. Then you leave it in their notebooks, and then at the very end of the project, you ask them to fill in what they learned. That's why KW, what I know, what I wonder about, and what I learned. So you will see what exactly they are taking away from that particular project.
Thank you. You'll have these resources in the handout. So
exactly. So don't worry. If you didn't manage to copy everything that Melissa shared with you, they are in the in the handout.
Thank you so much. That was excellent. And sorry to rush you at the end because you had so much useful information and it's so inspiring. There's just, I think we've got time for this one question. It's interesting from Popon. It's come from Facebook. I'm still confused how to begin this project for my students. Can you give me the simple and easy way to start it and ask my students to take care of it? So can you recommend perhaps a project that is easy as a starting point?
I can think of several. Maybe I'll mention one, and I'm sure Theo has lots of other ideas. I think that it's very good if you just identify a need, something that is visible in your school, in your community. If it's in your school, it's quite simple. The project can be, let's try to be sustainable, to use only sustainable materials in class. And together with the learners, you get them involved, and you look for alternatives to the usual way we do things. So something very practical at the classroom level, starting from what we noticed there. Theo?
Yeah, thinking about the school, maybe create a climate, green corner in your school, just simply to share, so that everybody sees what you're doing in the classroom, and you get to be an inspiration for others.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a brilliant idea, because it's very much in their world, isn't it? And you could often see, if you start with like a problem, like, oh, what can you see? Oh, there's rubbish on the floor, or we're not recycling enough, that kind of thing. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I'm afraid I'm going to have to finish there.
No problem.
We've got our other session starting on the hour. But thank you so much to both of you. It's so inspiring, and really we could have had like a whole series of webinars from you both with all the ideas.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you to
everybody.
Marcus.
Thank you.
Who's moderating, and we'll see you all in the next session in 3 minutes.